and welcome to the Scottish Roadscast, a podcast all about Scotland's roads, bridges and motorways. I'm Stuart Baird.
And I'm John Hassel.
John, it's wonderful to see you for episode 2 in 2023.
Yes, episode 2 in 2023. We've been doing this podcast for 5 years now?
5 years.
5 years.
18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. 6 years, John. 6 years.
I can't count, or, my memory's going.
My God, 6 years of podcasts.
That is a long time.
But just the second year of the Scottish Roadscast, of course.
Absolutely.
Anyway, this month is being led very much by you.
That's right.
What do you have for us?
Okay, so Stuart, we hear a lot of things relating to roads, don't we?
We do.
Okay, some true, some humorous, some annoying, but they're all interesting things we talk about.
Yep.
Well, today we're going to take a deep dive into some of the well-known and in some cases less well-known myths and urban legends about roads and motorways in Scotland.
Oh, there are so many.
This should be fun,
Oh,
right?
and some of them are so annoying.
Yeah, okay, so it's road myths and urban legends. So we can debunk a few of them.
Yeah.
Some we can't, but at least they provide quite good discussion points.
Yeah.
And we'll go into some oddities as well. So I think that would be...
I think that sounds interesting.
So yes. I've got quite a list here, and I just want to thank some of the people that have got in touch in social media, because I did do a shout out, yesterday about this. So, we've got some suggestions in, but I have come up with quite a few. And, of course, there's probably loads more out there. So as you're listening to this and you think, oh, we've not covered that, get in touch. Let us know, because it might be a fun topic to come back and explore.
Yeah.
Just before I go into the first myth, we did used to cover this on a previous generation of the website. We did have a website on it, if I recall correctly, back on Glasgow's Motorways.
The old myths page, yes, we did.
So I'll revisit some of them here. Mm-hmm. So, but what is a road myth or urban legend? I guess in the context of what we're doing, this really is something that is not entirely true or outright false. You can sometimes get a mixture of truth with some kind of false thing, or a hypothesis that people have formed for something odd on the road, or anomalous. So,
usually with no basis in fact.
Absolutely. Somebody said something, and a friend of a friend, and said to somebody who said to a taxi driver who then whatever. So, but they are good fun, these kind of things.
Yes.
Well, at least I think so, anyway.
Yeah.
So, the first one I'd like to start off with, Stuart, is the Charing Cross Bridge to Nowhere.
Oh, my old favourite.
Your old favourite. Now, there are two bridges to nowhere that they spoke about in Glasgow, and one of them was the Anderson Footbridge, which was completed.
Yes.
But we're talking about the one slightly to the north of that, at Charing Cross, where the cut and cover tunnel is. There was a bridge there. With nothing on it. So the myth goes something like this. There was an extra motorway or slip road that was going to go over Charing Cross and down Sauchiehall Street or towards the West End. And they built the bridge for it as part of the works for the inner ring road.
Yes.
But then this extra motorway was cancelled and they decided to hide the error by building Tay House on top of it, which is the red building that's there.
Goodness.
And the source of which are pretty much most Glaswegians. I couldn't really tie it down to anyone.
Yeah. Ridiculous.
All right.
Absolutely. Now, it's not ridiculous, I suppose, assuming that there was a motorway that was cancelled in Glasgow, because
there's plenty of them.
There's plenty of them.
Mm-hmm.
However, this one is just completely ridiculous.
Because it was never a bridge. It was a podium.
It's a podium.
Yeah.
Yes.
A podium because they plan to always put a building on top of that.
Yes.
Now, the way it's been told, we've done this one to death, so maybe it's best I just paraphrase it, but they originally thought, we'd put this here and we'll leave it up to private developers to come in. We'll build a motorway and they'll be flooding in to build their restaurants and offices and stuff like that. That never happened.
Yeah.
And of course it was left for years and years and years.
And we now have 4 sources who all confirm that was the case. So we had John Cullen, who was involved at Scott Wilson and involved in thinking about through Halfords what that would look like. Mm-hmm. We've also had Andy Davis, who was at Glasgow Corporation, as part of that. And we've also spoken to 2 people who worked at Fairhurst who designed that section of the Inner Ring Road. Mm-hmm. And both of them confirmed that was indeed the intention as well. And at one point, the bridge and the development that was on the top of that was going to be an extension of the Elmbank Gardens site, where the Charing Cross Tower Hotel and all that is. That was a Seaford and Partners thing, just like the Anderson development, but interest in it waned very much in the early 70s and it just simply didn't go ahead.
So Tay House, that came along, was it
1990 to 1992-ish, yes.
So that kind of, some of the time the Hilton and all these other things went up there.
And it's had various tenants over the years as well, that building. It's interesting, the last time the photo went up in social media, a few people rhymed off a number of people who had been in the building over the years. Some of them I didn't know interesting. The most recent one, I think, had been Barclays, but they've now moved, obviously. And we got a visit to Tea House.
And I loved that.
Just before COVID.
And got our pictures. We even got up on the roof and everything.
Pictures from the roof, but fantastic. And it's that part of the building is very much aimed at startups and things now, isn't it?
It is.
Modular offices and stuff.
They were all kind of like, small kind of companies and one-man outfits that are working out there.
And they were right, though. It's a great vista of the motorway and the city to the south.
I agree. Yeah, we managed to get some kind of angles and photos that we've never done before. The late John Cullen did shed some light on it, and I'm going to directly quote him here, just about this, the podium, as he calls it and what we call it, which was always intended to support a building and walkway, not a roadway. It was included for two reasons. First, there's a way of closing in Charing Cross, which had been seriously affected by demolition.
Yeah.
By adding a southern barrier, it was intended to reduce the visual impact of the motorway, which could be seen as far as the Kingston Bridge at this location. Yeah. And secondly, it was intended that the building on top of the podium would contain a restaurant or some other leisure facility that would give people a panoramic view of the motorway in the city.
Yeah.
A bit like Fortin Services, with that tower and everything there, the Pennine Tower, as it's known. So, there you go. Myth busted? Myth debunked?
Most definitely busted on that one. I think we have done enough over the last decade to make that one kind of go away, but it does still appear and rear its head every now and again.
Yeah, the fact there's a building on it, I think, busts it.
Right, and I think it's also helped by the fact that the footbridge has been finished now as well.
So we don't really have any bridges to nowhere now, do we?
We don't, other than the ski ramps at the south side of the Kingston Bridge.
But I don't count stubs. As I would call them.
Indeed.
So the next one is one that really winds you up, Stuart. And I'm not entirely sure where it's come from, but there is a certain culprit website I think has contributed to this one. But this is the M74 split carriageways at Candamos.
Oh this comes up again and again and again, even all these years later. Even though we have a book written by the people who designed the motorway that puts it to bed.
Yes.
It still comes back.
But I do love it. I think it's a pretty wacky one, and I always think about it when I go past. So just to put people in the picture, this is one. It's on the M74 between Junction 8 and Junction 9. Yeah. And if you're ever travelling down this section, you notice there's a section where the carriageway split quite a lot, and there's trees in the middle. Okay, Drafan. So the thing is, I think this one comes from the old road forums.
Our favourite.
So it's Sabre, and it went something along the lines of like they wanted to put in a motorway service area that would have presumably occupied this wide space in the middle.
I wish I had one of those sound effects they use in quiz shows when something's wrong.
The klaxon. Those things, or to accommodate some kind of junction or structure or road layout that would be for services. So but the thing is, I can see why people have arrived at this, because it is a bit of an anomaly that the carriageway split.
Yes.
Because there is no apparent reason or apparent engineering reason for it when you're driving past. However, the theory that they were going with is obviously to squeeze some kind of building in between the two carriageways. I mean, as wacky as it is, it's never sat well with me, because if you think about services anywhere else on the roads, they're not in between the carriageways. So it took us a while to finally debunk it. Well, common sense, Stuart, over the years, it's always been, no, it's not to actually put in any kind of building. We did wonder ourselves why the carriageway split. So I've handily got an excerpt here from the opening booklet, which we eventually found, which I see you've just got up on the screen. I've got ahead of you, and I've got this. So the opening booklet for that section of road, where when it opened in the late 1960s, it handily states, "This is one of the most attractive sections of the whole motorway, and an existing cluster of pine trees that have been retained between the carriageways, which for some distance run nearly 100 yards apart and at different levels. The road swings majestically past the trees, retaining the natural undulations of the rolling countryside along and between the carriageways." So there you go.
Yeah.
The carriageways were split for aesthetic reasons.
Yes. Yep.
And that's what it says just there, and they reference that in the book. So that killed that off. And I suppose, Stuart, we've never heard anything later on that they wanted to do with that particular section.
No, and I did ask the same question of one of the very senior resident engineers who worked for Babty, Sean Morton, overseeing the project construction, and he confirmed that was the case. It was ancient woodland. The pine trees were considered to be nice, and they decided just to keep the separation between them there.
Yeah, and I think the only way this came about was that somebody was sitting looking at maps, and obviously there was a temporary terminus. There was a kind of junction at Draffen, and things like that. And somebody thought, well, this must have been planned for something else.
I mean, I've seen speculation about the Stonehouse Newtown that was planned and whether it was to allow for a junction in there for that. No, that's why Canderside is the way that it is, was to enable, the connection via that. Services, no, the distance between service areas in this country tends to be somewhere around about 25 miles. Given Hamilton and Bothwell were only another 4 or 5 miles up the road, just absolutely no way.
But they were not opened.
But they were allowed for.
They were allowed for.
They were allowed for. They were deliberately allowed for with their slip roads and whatnot constructed. Yeah, it was 1980s before they came along. However, they were always planned to be in those locations.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah. So, do you want a small segue here?
Go on.
Okay. We're talking about services.
Yes.
Did you know there was another services planned, not on the 74, but on the M77?
Oh, this rings a bell.
So it's a separate note, but when they were planning the M77 extension southwards, the Fenwick to Mountsew one, which obviously goes from kind of Junction 5 all the way down to Meiklewood, there was one that was going to be between Junction 5 and Junction 6, known as Kingswell Services. It never happened.
Ah, yes.
It never happened. Now, I was looking into this. Believe it or not, the land to this day is still for sale, saying for services development.
I'm surprised Eurogarages or somebody like that hasn't snapped that up.
Hasn't jumped in.
Yeah.
My thought would be just put something. What is it? Maidenhill is it called?
Maidenhill, yeah, 5. Yeah.
Junction 5. Something squeezed in there, but no, it was a separate services area they wanted to put in between the two junctions. I've never seen any plans for it, but there is a kind of parcels of land available for that type of development.
I suppose it would be a nice gap between Moncton and the city centre. You've got services at Moncton at the end of A78, A77.
And it was to be called Kingswells.
Yeah.
So
interesting.
Yeah. So that's that one. Okay, the next myth. This is pretty funny or pretty embarrassing, the way you want to look at it.
Okay.
But the next myth I've got titled is The Scottish Roads Archive and the Missing M7. So
what's a weird myth?
Yeah. Would you believe that we could be possible for perpetuating or even creating an urban legend?
Oh.
Okay.
Never.
So I've included this one because we done a podcast on this fairly recently, which actually caused an amusing incident at work.
Oh, really?
Right. Okay. So a colleague of mine who doesn't know that I do this podcast.
Oh dear.
Right? He didn't know, but he knows I like these sorts of road matters. He came and said to me that he heard from a friend that Scotland had a missing motorway called the M7 that was never built and was meant to go to Edinburgh. So I was like, oh, here we go. When I heard this, what's this all about? So I think we need to clarify a few things, because the myth is that there was this road called the M7 and it was never built, and that's why we don't have the M7.
And as we clearly state in the podcast itself, the project name was Fastlink. And it was to link the M74 at Abington with the M8 at Whitburn.
Yeah.
It's never been clarified one way or the other.
What the number would be.
What the number would be. However, there was a lot of discussion about the designation. And at points, it was said that it would be a special road. And a special road means a motorway.
Yeah.
And if you're looking for a number for a motorway that's in that corridor and you use the Scottish rules to determine what that number would be, it would be M7.
Yeah.
Just the way the M73 replaced the A73, the M7 would replace the A7. Although, you could also argue it could be the M702.
Yeah.
But given it would be a motorway with a high profile, I imagine the M7 number would have been the more appropriate.
More appropriate one to
yes.
do that. But if it was A road, I wonder what it would have been.
We make it clear in the podcast, however, that is speculation on our part.
Yeah. Maybe they just looked at the thumbnail and they didn't actually listen to the podcast.
Even that has a question mark.
Even that has a question mark, absolutely. So I see how this started before we even done the podcast, because we kind of latched on to people saying that.
Yeah.
Because we have an M1, we have an M2, we have an M3, M4, and so on. Of course, we have an M8, M9. So it's true that there is no M7, hence saying it's missing isn't false.
Yeah.
It's just an unassigned number as it stands,
Yeah.
if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So...
Remember when we used to have those ridiculous discussions as well about the M73 and why it was numbered M73 and how it related to the roads it was replaced and all that? It's the same
it's along the same lines, isn't it? It's connected to that. Yes.
I mean, you could even have renumbered the A7 and given the A7 number to the new dual carriageway, if that's what it had been, and renumbered the A7 as something else.
Well, kind of like what they've done with the A92 and the A90.
Yeah, there you go. There's something to think about. Use the more high-profile number, because it kind of does the same thing.
It didn't sit well with me when somebody came up and said that to me. No one has ever said that to me before, and I thought, oh, what have we done? So I suppose it was good to revisit that, just to clarify.
It's good that we're getting people talking.
I know. No, I don't go around telling loads of people that I do the podcast, in fairness, unless they ask. Yeah. So no, it's just funny.
Discover it by accident.
Discovered it by accident. I don't think he listened to it. He heard from somebody else, but this is how these rumours start.
Yeah,
It kind of goes along. So there we go. I think that kind of definitively covers that one. So
we shall keep an eye on that one.
Right. Okay. So can I make one final note about it? It is something true here is that. And this is certain, but never in any official documentation is M7 ever mentioned.
Mm-hmm. No, that's correct.
Ever.
Yeah, that's right.
It's just speculation. So.
Yeah.
Okay. Next one: Scotland's secret motorway, the A92M. You heard about this one? This
one doesn't exist either.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So I'll tell you the story because you might change your mind about this because there's a few people who are funny about it. So according to the website Pathetic Motorways, which we have spoken about before, it's still live. It's a great site. And it kind of focuses more on the unusual roads across the UK and of course some roads in Scotland.
Yeah.
We apparently have a secret motorway in Scotland. Okay. So this is the A92 or A92M, as the article suggests.
Oh my.
And this is at the M90 junction to Halbeath. Okay. Where this is a short spur that opened in 1997 for the A92 traffic heading to and from the M90 to basically bypass Halbeath and Crossgates roundabouts. So you know where I'm talking about. Yes, you've got Google Maps.
I'm bringing it up on the map as we speak. Yep.
No, that's fine. So the article on Pathetic Motorways claims that because it has a blue for motorway route confirmation start from the M90 saying A92, this must be the A92M. And I sort of see where the article is coming from.
No, because when you're heading in the southbound or westbound direction...
He addresses this as well.
and you pass the roundabout where non-motorway traffic leaves, it is immediately signed as M90. Yeah. And legally, as part of special roads and motorways in Scotland, you can have long lengths of slip road that are assigned to the motorway they connect to. Yeah. So these are two slip roads of the M90.
Yeah, okay. So you're looking at, I can see you've got Google Street View up. You're looking at the southbound direction. But specifically the bit that where this theory comes from is the other way. So as if you're coming from the A90 going on to the A92.
That is no different to you taking a motorway off slip that then chucks you down on some at-grade roundabout or whatever. Now, you think of Junction 9 in the M74, when it runs for like 3/4 of a mile, you're on a slip road, you then get dumped on the B7078 or whatever it is.
Yeah.
That's not the B7078M, that's still the M74.
Yes, because they don't put a sign there with a route confirmation. It's the route confirmation sign that causes this entire thing. Now, you're looking at those route confirmation signs there, but if you go to the other side... which is up at junction 2A of the M90, there is a sign that has A92, and then it has Cowdenbeath so many miles, Glenrothes so many miles. So, I mean, it's a fairly unremarkable 2-kilometre section of road which has blue signs and no hard shoulders. It is motorway. No one is disputing the fact that it's motorway, rather what the road is. Is it M90? Is it A92? Or is it A92M? So
where is this sign?
You have to go back as if you're coming off the M90, just back at the sec. So you go all the way back. I think you've ended up warping onto another street now. So yeah, that's it. So that sign on the left is what causes it.
So that is an error on the part of the design.
Yes,
the design of the sign. That A92 should be in brackets.
Yes,
that should say. Actually, you could say it would be M90, then brackets A92. So that's an error on the part of the sign designer.
It is. You're absolutely right.
It doesn't change the legality or the number of the route.
So that's your take. Here's what I'm going to say about it. Okay?
Yeah, but if you look here, though,
The sign on the offside,
it has it in brackets.
It has it in brackets. So you got one sign saying in brackets as it should be, and the sign on the left just saying A92, which is erroneous.
You know as well as me that the design of signage in the UK is inconsistent and is very much open to the interpretation of the particular designer.
Yeah.
So that's been one of these wee errors that's just slipped through the net. Be interesting to see if that's an original sign, if that's been there since day one, or if that's been added later.
Okay. Well, I'll say this next section, and I'm not here to tear apart the website Pathetic Motorways. I've met the owner of the website, Stephen. He's a great guy, and the way he puts the articles together, they're very entertaining, and they're actually great kind of little thought experiments in many ways. But since we've now recently received the opening booklet for the scheme,
yes,
because we got this through, and reviewed also the orders for the road,
yes,
nowhere is the A92M ever mentioned. Now that's different compared to the A8M Swinton motorway,
which is its own thing, because from a legal point of view, it's a separate route. It doesn't connect to the M8 in any way.
Yeah.
So Bailston Roundabout and that dual carriageway are A8M because they are their own thing.
This is a secret motorway, although it wasn't secret to begin with because it had a sign, they took it away.
Yeah.
It is a secret motorway, but it is actually for real a secret motorway.
If you are fined on that road, then the police would state that you were fined on the 8M.
The A8M.
And likewise, if they're promoting a temporary traffic order or something like that, that will also say A8M. But there's no secret made about that. Okay, the public aren't aware that it's a new motorway.
Yeah,
it makes sense just to make it
I think
look like
the definition of
A8.
secret motorway is that it's not given that number on the ground somewhere, and it's hidden away.
The A92 one has just never... It's not one I've ever registered before, because it's clearly a continuation of the M90 slip roads.
Yeah.
And the ADS, or the route confirmation sign at the far end coming from the east, clearly states the start of the M90. So it's just the M90 on slip. The fact that two brackets are missing from that sign has created a whole issue.
Is what causes it.
I think the problem is...
For all intents and purposes, it's all M90. I agree.
Yeah.
And the thing is, I worked on this section of road with all these things, and never was it referred to as A92M. No. As fun as that would have been.
Yeah.
I mean, we used to call it the Crossgate Spur. To be honest with you, but even an official recommended on the database, the Trunk Road database, it's not referred to.
What's it called in the opening booklet? Is it just the Halbeath Spur? Or
I think it's Halbeath Interchange.
Halbeath Interchange.
So it's called M90/A92 Halbeath Interchange.
Just 2 3/4 slip roads.
And it's fine to say A92 because there was a section of also separate to this A92 that was constructed.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you know what? It all comes down to a signing error. To be honest with you. And by the way, like I said, it's not a dig at Stephen and the website.
Not at all.
Pathetic Motorways, because it's a very funny article that he's managed to write about it as well, and it's just interesting. It's a little quirk. So when you're driving through there, you can think, oh, okay, all right, I can see how this might have been the case, but no, it's just M90. Sorry.
Yeah, just M90, exactly. Yeah.
But we do have that, like we mentioned about A8M, we do actually have a legit secret motorway in Scotland, and we can talk about that a wee bit more at another point. So there we go. So Stuart, the next one I wanted to talk about was one we used to cover on the website. Somebody has written in about it as well, and it's quite a famous one in Glasgow, and this is the supposed alleged bodies that are buried under the Kingston Bridge.
No, this one again. And somebody on social media...
It's famous.
A new follower recently was going on about all the bodies in it, but there are no bodies in the supports of the Kingston Bridge.
Here's how it goes. So it's real Glasgow folklore stuff. So the myth seemed to surface apparently in the 1990s. It wasn't in the 60s.
Has no one seen the density of reinforcement that's required in these supports to hold up the bridge?
Yeah.
You could barely get an arm in there, never mind a body.
Yeah.
It's just...
Well, you're using the engineering to debunk it, and that is quite good, but I suppose people think, they've seen gangland movies, or they've seen things where people
somebody's getting chucked in a hole or whatever.
and then the concrete's put on top. But you're right, the kind of the bearing capacity required of this concrete, if you were to put a body into it, the void would cause problems. It wouldn't work.
Yeah.
But it came around in the 1990s when the Kingston Bridge was undergoing obviously the major maintenance and major repairs, and a lot of the big papers ran stories about how during during the bridge's construction in the 60s, gangsters' bodies were buried in the concrete support piers on the foundation of the bridge, which seemed to kind of... They'd been kind of drawing dots between people who went missing in the 60s and they could never find what happened to them, and then the Kingston Bridge was built and somebody heard it from a taxi driver and it went on like that. Now, I've done a bit of digging around and most of the stories, like I said, seem to come from the Daily Record, but none of them are substantiated, and certainly no human remains were found in the 90s when the bridge when they were doing works under the bridge.
No, I mean, is it impossible? No, absolutely not, particularly if it was the foundations. But nothing's ever been found.
Nothing's been found. And this is a speculation.
Yeah, that would also imply that the contractor and any suppliers were in on it.
Yeah,
and that's not really something that the Glasgow motorway system was known for, because it had very reputable consultants and contractors involved in its construction.
Yeah.
So I would be very, very... This was not just some wee road in the middle of nowhere where you could just very easily dump a body in and nobody would have told anybody.
Yeah.
This was a huge scheme with thousands of people working on it. I think it would be... Somebody couldn't just turn up one night, chuck a body in and bury it over with concrete, because when supervisors and whatnot come out the next day, hang on, who poured that concrete? Yeah. Without me watching it, get it broken out, we're redoing it. Yeah. Rubbish. No. Absolute rubbish.
It's a good story, albeit morbid, but
rubbish.
The fact is no one ever has found it. Leaves it a myth. Now, this is where someone's got in touch on it, and it is related to bodies in and around the Kingston Bridge, but is the relocation of cemeteries along the line of the west flank, or specifically the north of the Clyde as part of the approach for the Kingston Bridge.
North approaches.
Yeah. That's right, around the Anderson area. So Alistair on Facebook got in touch, and Alistair says, Alistair Redpath says, not necessarily an urban legend, but the demolition of Anderson Old, so that's Heddle Place, St Mark's, which is Cheapside Street for Catholic interments, and North Street cemeteries to make way for the M8. He says something about involved with the sheriff's order and a few dodgy reinterments. So it is true, by the way, that cemeteries and bodies that were buried there were moved as part of the comprehensive redevelopment.
Yeah, and we've had inquiries about this from the BBC and others over the years about asking about it, and because they think it's an interesting thing to talk about. Actually, the relocation of bodies from some places and the reinterment of them is actually not that unusual. In the sense that sometimes when things are built and bodies are discovered or whatever, then they're moved and reinterred.
Well, look, Edinburgh Trams, and I think it's especially Crossrail. They had to deal with a lot of that.
Yeah. In the case of the west flank of the Ring Road, which was part of this comprehensive development area for the Anderson area, an active decision was made to relocate people who had been buried. And my understanding is that mostly unmarked graves, and these were people who had perhaps died of certain illnesses and things like that. Not particularly famous people, anything like that, and the decision was made, rather than to just cap these people below the line of the road or any of the other developments at the Anderson Centre as well, that it would be nicer and more
to give them
a
proper burial,
to move these people to a proper cemetery in the south side. And I believe it was the Lynn Cemetery in the south side that they were moved to. I think that's what John Cullen told us. So that's perhaps fed into some of this as well.
Well, in a way, just that component of the story is true.
Yeah, Glasgow Uni have an article online about other cemeteries across Glasgow that were moved for various things or have been built over since. It's actually more common than you might think.
Yeah, exactly. We're probably, if we think about it, we're probably always building somewhere on top of where somebody could have been buried.
Absolutely,
or died,
You're right.
With these things. So the next one's really fun. Okay, and hopefully, I notice you've been getting more and more riled up as we've been going through these.
I hate this kind of thing.
You really don't like misinformation.
Yeah,
it's amazing you survive on the internet.
I detest it. It really annoys me. I particularly when you present someone with factual information, source material that debunks some of these things, and still they persist in arguing that theirs is the case.
Some people just like to do it for a bit of fun, like Pathetic Motorways, for example. I think they were just posing it as a maybe, you know what I mean? But
like the same person on Facebook that kept insisting that the Kingston Bridge was sinking every time a post went up about it. He got banned incidentally, but it's just rubbish. The
problem with stuff like this, it can cause panic. And I've seen it. Facebook is the worst for it. Where we can see some of these things.
A certified Facebook expert says
Yeah.
You know, yeah.
I said this, and somebody copies and shares that and doesn't fact check it.
And
then we have to make a podcast.
Yeah. Before you know it, it's taken as fact. It really annoys me.
Okay. All right. Well, the next one's a good one. So it's the haunted A75.
I'm completely unfamiliar with this because it's not a road that I really know. I've only used it a couple of times.
Okay. All right. So this isn't a paranormal podcast for anyone listening. There are plenty of them if you want to listen to them.
There's tons of them.
But here's a Scottish road ghost story for you all. So we can talk about this because it's to do with roads. I really should have saved this one for Halloween. Yeah. Actually, it's quite good. So the tale goes that the A75, which is a trunk road, by the way, between Carruthers Town and Annan, specifically a section called the Kinmont Strait, is the most haunted road in Scotland. One of the most haunted in the UK.
According to who?
It's just local legend and stories that go through. That's the kind of theme here that we're going through. Mm-hmm. Now, it's haunted by an endless ambition to maybe be upgraded to dual carriageway as well. Do you like that? I prepared that one in advance. Yeah. In advance, I know there's always big kind of ambition to get that road duelled by the locals, isn't there? So, and anyway, you said according to who? So, according to a BBC article, believe it or not,
I'm surprised
on it, there have been numerous sightings of, and I put in quotes here, screaming hags, eyeless phantoms, and a menagerie of unearthly creatures witnessed on this famous road.
Hang on, have you ever been in Castle Douglas or Stranraer?
But no, this is what it quotes. It says from the article, I love this. It's a great passage of text. A menagerie of unearthly creatures witnessed on this famous road. It's a pretty unfair thing to say about my colleagues who work on it, but
Yeah, it's a rare thing seeing any maintenance getting done down there. That's for sure.
It's actually very well maintained, I'd have you know. So apparently, on the article, a bloke who used to run a snack van along this section said weird stuff would happen on a weekly basis. He would hear kind of spooky tales from traumatised HGV drivers who parked up in laybys to spend the night along that section.
Some of those screaming hags coming for a wee knock at the door, maybe? I mean, no offence to our listeners in Dumfries and Galloway.
It's a shame this is going to be our last podcast, isn't it? We're going to get banned after this. So... and it's a good thing we're not monetized. So it was said that one HGV driver was so shocked by his experience that he gave up lorry driving as a result when he was woken up at 3 a.m. in the morning and seen a parade of people or ghosts, as it would be, going along the road.
Yeah. I ask myself what he'd been taking earlier in the evening.
Well, exactly. Well, he didn't have. He gave up the job after that, if that says anything. So other common sightings are groups of people pulling handcarts, strange animals, horsemen and carriages. So apparently this has been going on.
It still sounds like rural Dumfries to me.
Right, we need to take this seriously. People have been traumatised here. So okay. So I knew about this alleged phenomenon.
Yeah.
At this location on the 75, and I actually joked to my colleagues, by the way, about this because they've spent the last couple of months doing survey work in exactly this area. And I told them, I was like, right, watch out, be careful, guys, with the traffic, but be careful for the ghosts.
Yeah.
They hadn't heard of it either. Now, of course, they were working during the day, but I've never heard them come back and say anything about it, to be honest with you. So, to me, I've never had any evidence of it. I mean, I work for a company that maintains this road. We don't get any strange reports, or at least what I've heard from people working there. I'm not saying... The thing is, it's a funny one, this, because this isn't something I suppose we've covered. Is you can't... People have a strange experience with something, but they don't really have any evidence of it. Why would they come out and say it?
Because, these stories always come from the middle of the night. It's always usually one person on their own. They're probably half asleep at the wheel, or they go into one of those trances where you're just on the road and you're driving and you think back 20 minutes, you go, I don't even remember passing that bit of road or whatever. It's probably that. They're hallucinating to an extent. They're seeing these things and it's like, oh my God, they wake up. They're probably in some kind of like dreamlike trance driving along the road. It's rubbish.
The thing is, also in the article, it has said this guy who ran this snack van, said these reports would come from a wide variety of different people,
right?
From just normal people traveling the road to commercial goods drivers and stuff like that.
Yeah,
Not kind of people who kind of got together and came up with this story. People from far and wide travelling who might not be familiar with the area, which gives it some credence because nobody's colluded to come together with this story.
But that's the same about ghost stories everywhere.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, oh, I've seen a ghost. Oh, you've seen a ghost. Did you see it together? No. Does anybody ever see a ghost together? No.
This is just it. So well, I've never had a strange experience on that section of road, but do you know the section of road I'm on about?
I don't know the section of road you're talking about, but I've heard haunted stories from other bits of road, like Headless Cross on the A71, Fauldhouse, Shotts. Yeah. That's another one that I listen. I've had a person years ago tell me a story of what they believed they saw on the A71 late at night when driving home from Edinburgh, and that person wholeheartedly believed that they saw what they saw in the middle of the road. And you're like, well, were they tired? Was their mind wandering? Were they drifting? Have you heard of phantom hitchhikers? No. So this is a good one, right? So people see someone, they're driving along at night, of course, and there's somebody hitching a lift, and they're often dressed in strange, archaic clothing or something like that. Okay. They pick the person up, they get into the car, all seems normal, and then the driver turns around at one moment and that person is gone. And then, this understandably causes some alarm. And then of course, the cherry on the cake, the story is they discover that somebody had died there and died years and years and Which
years
I think is the story of the Headless Cross in A71. I think there was a murder or something like that done. And
you don't...
It's sort of a...
I haven't had, like, when I've been driving, but I will say something, and you alluded to this earlier about kind of hallucinations and stuff like that, is that I've had quite a lot of experience of working on roads at night. Yeah, driving, but mostly walking around. And I was convinced one night when I was on the A823M of all things that somebody was walking behind me, and I was on my own. Right, and it was a completely closed slip road, and I heard footsteps behind me. That was the A823M, not a secret motorway. That one, the A823M, yeah. And it was the ghost of roads maintenance past. Yeah. There was maintenance going on that night. No, I was on my own. But the thing is, it's you hear lots of strange things in the woods, and it could be animals. Yeah, it could also be kind of reverberations on your footsteps.
Yep. Getting some interference in the mic right now. Have you summoned the demon? As part of this conversation.
Is this the electronic voice phenomenon?
Yeah, we're getting some crackling of some kind. Okay. So let's just pause there and we'll fix that and we'll come back.
Okay, so it's
yeah, did you do that?
That's quite scary. That was, it's just come up with some strange interference there when we were speaking about that.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, okay, all right. Maybe this is a good point to stop talking about haunted roads. Haunted roads. So I've got a few others in here. To be honest with you, yeah. Honestly, I never actually even touched anything. No, neither did I. That's the really, really strange thing, to be honest. So I've got some other mentions, moving away from the haunted roads and the bodies under the bridge and stuff like that. This is a driving myth.
Okay.
So it's
what's a driving
myth. So it's something more not so much to do with roads, but a behaviour while you're driving. Right. So do you remember growing up that your dad would often say to you, "Turn that light off" when you're in the car? The interior light of a car and stuff like that. So it's driving with the interior light on is illegal. That's the myth. Total hokum.
Yeah, I think Nick told us that.
He did, yeah, he did. I know there's dads up and down the nation who are going to be hopping up and down about this, but it's only an issue, apparently, if it is causing a distraction to you, like anything else that would cause a distraction to you, that the police could pull you up on. But no, having the interior light on, not that you'd want it on all the time.
I mean, if you were in a dark section of a rural motorway and the interior light was on, you probably struggle to see out through the windscreen, you would think.
Yeah, which would culminate in the sort of distraction that I'm talking about.
So I kind of see where that, but it's not about the light itself. It's about the visibility and whatnot, right?
Yeah. Okay. So, yeah, it's not illegal. Yeah. So that was just a nice little short one I put in there.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So back to roads, and this is one we used to cover on the website. It's the missing loop on the old M8 Renfrew bypass terminus up at Bishopton. Yes. So as we know, the M8 Renfrew bypass opened in 1968. It didn't go all the way to the Erskine Bridge. It stopped at the A8 Greenock Road. And there was a loop that went round there. Presumably it looked like a T-junction on a lot of maps, but there was actually a loop. Now, we have no photos of this.
No.
It isn't even mentioned in the booklets.
No.
But it has appeared on some maps, and some people have said to us, yes, there was definitely a loop there. That's how you went there. But it only existed, the loop, for a number of years until the Erskine Bridge was opened.
So from 1968 to 1970. So the Renfrew bypass opened in March 1968, and the extension Bishopton 1, which also the south approach date was December 70. So
apparently the loop closed.
Yeah.
And the other slip roads, closing that junction for many years until it reopened again in 2019.
Yeah. Well, if you remember, the junction remained open until the completion of Bishopton Bypass Stage 2 in 1975.
That's right, yes. Yeah. So it was 1975, and they eventually got rid of it because then West Ferry was seen as the...
Which, from a Bishopton point of view, you can see why there was some frustration there, because that's a long way for a shortcut, to get into the village.
The myth of the loop was always... It was... made worse by the fact there was never any evidence of it on the ground. Now, where we've seen roads stubbed up or removed, there's often, there's no trees there, or you can see like some old curbs or something, or even in the other side of the very same junction, they left the tarmac there because the farmer used it as an access road. The loop was gone.
Yeah.
I was certainly not driving or in the area around the time that would have been. I wasn't even born.
Yeah.
So... I've never seen any evidence of the loop. We've never seen any pictures of it.
No.
But people say the loop was there, and maps have shown it to be there.
The thing that's so frustrating about it is if we were to get some progress photographs for the construction of the Renfrew bypass, that would show how it ended before the overbridge went in. And if we could then get the contract photos for Bishopton 1,
you would see
we would then see it in there. But those
very
photos
much
have eluded us so far.
Yes, very much in the same way that we've looked at a lot of photos lately for the M9 and started to see old terminuses, because that gets any enthusiast in these things really going. If only there was an archive of Crouch and Hog material that we could go through.
Oh, well, watch this space.
Watch this space, indeed. So, no, that was a good one. So, not a Scottish one, but have you heard about the M6 toll? This is the M6 toll is the UK Autobahn myth.
Right. I don't know what this is. No.
Okay.
No.
All right. Okay. So not a Scottish one, but plenty of people up here do mention it because, of course, we travel all around the UK.
Yeah.
Due to the M6 toll having no enforceable speed limit. Okay. So the M6 toll is a road that was, I believe it was opened around about very early 2000s.
2005 was 2000,
it? Yeah, 2000, maybe a little bit earlier, but it was opened up around about that time to bypass Birmingham.
Yeah.
And what people say is because it's a toll road and private road, they can't enforce the speed limit.
That's rubbish.
Just categorically untrue and a terrible factoid. I'd say it kind of go around spreading around. It has a maximum speed limit of 70 miles an hour, which reduces near the toll plazas and is covered by legislation to enforce its limit, like any other motorway.
These silly things come
because
from?
People think it's like a turnpike road and it's run by some private Midlands Expressway. And
it was procured in exactly the same way any highway or road in this country has been built since the war, and it's just simply operated by a private company.
Yeah,
and who take tolls for it? Oh my god!
I know.
Yeah, these annoy me.
they are annoying because it's bad advice. Somebody can think, I won't get caught here, and then next thing they do. Now, I think it's the fact that the police, people seem to claim that they never see police on it. And the thing is, that my observations of using this is that certainly I've never seen police on the M6 toll, but I do see them on the M42, which is where you get dumped when you come off it. And I think because the M6 toll is very quiet.
I suspect the police resources are probably better spent on the Midland Links and the M42 and
because of where things are. So people get this thing as, I never see cops on it.
Yeah.
So they must never bother with it. But no, actually one driver was caught doing, I think it was about 147 on it or something. So people have been done.
Absolutely no excuse for anyone driving on a road at that speed.
It's outrageous. But anyway, again, he could have, if only he listened to this podcast.
Yeah,
he would have saved himself a lot of bother.
Yeah.
So that's just it. But that's it. It's not a Scottish one, so I'm not going to focus on it too much. So
can I throw one in?
Yes, I know what you're going to say, but you have one. Go for it.
I need to put this one in because it drives me crazy.
Because we've mentioned it very recently.
Yeah, and it needs to be said again that this persistent view that Townhead, Cowcaddens and Anderston were cleared solely for the construction of the M8 motorway drives me wild. No. In 1955, Glasgow Corporation designated 29 comprehensive development areas across the city.
Yeah.
It was determined at that time that all property within the boundary of those areas would be cleared and they would be completely rebuilt with new facilities. The ring road design that came along in 1961, 6 years later, was specifically told to make sure the road fitted within the CDAs where possible.
Yeah.
Townhead, Anderston, Cowcaddens, Kinning Park, all of these things. To think that people imagine that hundreds of acres of land in Anderston was cleared, and Townhead was cleared for a 30-metre wide motorway.
Yeah.
It's just ridiculous. It's just beyond all comprehension. No. The decision to clear these areas was made first, and then the motorway designed to fit within them.
Because the myth is, obviously, they cleared all these areas just for the road.
For the road.
And then, I mean, I suppose in the myth spreader's head is, they cleared all these things, they put the motorway through, and then they were left with all this empty space, so they thought, let's go put up all these 60s
if it was
houses.
all this accidental thing that happened at the end. Oh, there's space, let's put a Hilton hotel in there. No.
It absolutely wasn't.
Yeah.
It was all part of those first. No, and it is a myth. I think it does qualify.
Yeah.
As one of these things that people go on and say. But to be a devil's advocate here, these people don't know that.
No, well, hopefully they're listening and they do.
They do. This is the thing. They see M8. No, M8 is referred to today. Nobody says, "Oh, I'm going to the Cowcaddens Comprehensive Redevelopment Area today." Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, this is jargon that was used at the time.
We could maybe get some of those screaming hags from Dumfries to come up and educate them. Give them a wee fright.
Okay. So
that is just that is going to stick with it. It's the best words ever uttered in any of our podcasts. Screaming hags.
Screaming hags. Yeah. I don't know, a menagerie of whatever it was just terrific.
Thank you, John. You have helped us reach a new level.
Yeah. No, I told you this would be fun. So, speaking of fun, Duncan has got in touch. And
Duncan, not our Duncan.
Our Duncan. But
he
Duncan,
doesn't qualify for questions or anything anymore.
Well, no, but he is fun. So he has turned around and said, when you're doing the myths one, make sure you mention the M90 myth in here. Now, I don't think you know this one, so we'll see how you react to this.
Here we go.
So Duncan McKnight's got a good myth for us, and this is the M90 Kinross and Milnathorpe bypass, which opened in December 1971, so we're M90 now.
Okay.
So it was constructed in unreinforced concrete,
right?
Okay, supposedly to allow the motorway to be used as an emergency runway if the Cold War ever heated up. Because you know where RAF Lucas is around there. So if RAF Lucas was destroyed for some reason, they would use. Now, why are you laughing? Why are you laughing?
Because this is something that comes up across the UK, right? About motorways and roads and dual carriageway and things like that, right? It's rubbish. It's utter rubbish, right? The street furniture alone that we use on our motorways and dual carriageways would never allow for planes to land on it. Now, 1971, that was complete, right? So that tells me that by that stage we were putting barrier at either the sides or in the middle of our motorways, right?
Hopefully.
We would have had large signs, potentially up to 8 metres tall, with big concrete or big steel posts. So any big planes with wingspans, beyond 10, 15 metres, were never going to be able to land. It is simply rubbish. And most of that motorway, I believe, is in cutting rather than on embankment. It
is, and it's bendy in many sections as well. On very, very good. I mean, the M90 has one of the steepest gradients of a mainline motorway.
Right, now, would you be able to get some small fighter jets or whatever landing on there? Possibly.
Some of it doesn't even have a shoulder.
What would be the benefit of the Cold War? I mean, really, it's like...
If Lucas was destroyed.
If we were at the stage where Lucas is destroyed, right, what would be the need to land planes in a random part of rural Perthshire or Kinrossshire? I just don't see... There are other air bases.
So from a military strategy point of view, I think a motorway, just pretend that if this was to happen, a certain contingency plan being placed to go out, cut all the signs down, remove the lighting columns, take the barrier away.
The nature of the Cold War, right, was that things would escalate probably very quickly, and that you would have very little warning. This is not conventional warfare where things will rage for weeks and weeks before you reach a flashpoint, right? The whole point of mutually assured destruction is somebody would launch an attack and somebody would launch one back, and within half an hour, nuclear weapons would be detonating all across the world. Right? You wouldn't have somebody, let's get those signs removed on the M90 now.
Yeah.
Now, you know as well as me, even in the regional council days, it would have taken days to organise something like that. It would it's just so...
And no such contingencies I've ever come across working at Trunk Roads is, here's some emergency dossier here, and we need to open this in case we get nuked, and we need to suddenly shut the M8 and do this.
Absolutely rubbish. No, that's not... Look, you can never be completely sure on this, right? And there's nothing to say that there wasn't some bunker or something in that part of the world that people didn't know about.
And there was Scotland's secret bunker.
Yeah, which was a bit further away, right? But I imagine that most people being brought into that would have been brought by probably helicopters and things like that and dumped or flown into lookers or whatever. But these people would have already been in position before the bombs went off. I don't see why, as part of recovery or whatever, if your airfields are destroyed, the motorways are... They're not sufficiently near things for them to be... certainly not the M90.
Yeah.
Right? I know. It's rubbish. It's crap.
No. It's... the thing is with it is it's cool that Duncan submitted this because it's got a rise out of you, which is what I intended.
And manholes and things like that, you know as well as me, that the strength of manhole covers runways and airfields have a different specification for the strength of these covers and things.
Of course they do, yeah.
Motorways don't have that.
Yeah,
they just don't. Yeah,
but there's nothing to back up that it was. It's just a rumor.
And can we just clarify again?
Yeah,
this comes from one of these opening booklets or papers for that section of M90, where the concrete carriageway is described as being unreinforced. That's not true, and a couple of people with knowledge of that road had come in at various points and said, "Look."
I was just quoting.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. It is reinforced, right? But this unreinforced word is used in one paper, and it just confuses matters. Of course, it's reinforced in some way. It's not just mass concrete poured into the ground.
Because there's a difference between continuously reinforced and these sections that they put in, and I think that's where it comes from.
Yeah, I think maybe discontinuous concrete slabs or something like that. But sorry, just to put that one in there.
We'll get our concrete road expert on here for that.
Yes, indeed. McKnight.
So, have we got time for one more?
Yeah, I suppose we have. I'm still thinking about how ridiculous it would be, the concept of planes landing in the Vulcan bombers.
Has it ever happened where a civilian plane has had to land on a motorway?
Not in the UK, as far as I'm aware.
Are you sure of that?
I mean, obviously, a British Airways plane took out a bit of the M1 at Kegworth in 1989 when it crash landed on approach to the airport there.
That was they weren't deliberately trying to land.
I don't think there's any, because there's a nice big long straight section of road might look good, but there's just too many things poking up at the ground. The SOS phones, signs. You know as well as me, one of them punctures a fuel tank in a plane coming in for an emergency landing. That's not any good. It's just gonna you just won't contemplate that.
Well, you'd be better off landing in the water.
Exactly. Yeah.
All this stuff.
The roads might have the width, but there's other things, and
Okay. All right.
Yeah. Bridge parapets, all these sorts of things that are just in the way. No.
Okay.
No. Rubbish.
So,
right, one more.
It's been debunked. There you go. Stuart said it. So this one, it's not a myth.
Oh.
Because it's actually a thing.
Well,
but it has some mythical thing, but no, it's odd. That's why I'm putting it in.
Right.
But it's a section of the A719 known as the Electric Bray.
Oh, down in Ayrshire.
Right, okay, yes. So somebody has reminded me to include this from social media, and thank you. Now, this is south of Dunure.
Yes.
Which isn't far from Ayr, is it? It's kind of...
What is that, about 10 miles south of Ayr?
Yeah, it's on that section there. It's even got a plaque on it.
Yes.
So...
it's a gravity hill.
It's a gravity hill. So what this means is, if you were to go to this section of road and your car was in neutral, okay... Even though the road is going uphill or appears to look uphill, you would freewheel uphill.
Forwards. Yes.
Freewheeled forward. Mm-hmm. Which is, you think, if you were uphill, you'd start rolling backwards. But no, it actually propels you upwards. And, of course, this was just not understood. It thought that some kind of mythical force was taking you uphill, some kind of weird electromagnetic phenomenon that we didn't understand, and thus it was called Electric Bray.
Yeah.
Now, if you go here, there's even a plaque.
Yeah.
And even more humorously is there's a warning sign saying gravity hill ahead, slow vehicles, because everybody stops and tests the theory. Now, have you been on it?
Yes, many times.
Yeah, so have I.
Yes.
Okay. I was in an automatic, so it wasn't as fun to try and get
because it's rolling forward
because I had to put the car into neutral.
Yep.
And make sure, of course, if you go to this, the road's absolutely clear that you are doing this. But it is an optical illusion.
Yeah.
So the road is actually slightly going downhill. But the scenery on the either side is going uphill.
So you feel as though you also are going uphill.
Yes, it is purely an optical illusion.
Yeah.
So you're going downhill, but the scenery's going up.
Yeah.
And that is a simple explanation to that, to be honest with you. Now, this phenomenon, I mean, this one's called electric bray, but this phenomenon of gravity hills, there are hundreds of these across the world. There's 3 in England. There's one in Wales, one in Northern Ireland as well. Yep. So it's a cool thing to check out if you're ever down there in that part of the world. But no, it's not some paranormal force. It's an optical illusion.
They're all in the A75.
Yes, allegedly. And the A71, as you mentioned. But no, that's electric bray. I thought that one was pretty good.
It's an interesting one to chuck in there. It is worth a drive on if you've never done it before. I mean, once you've done it, you're like, is that it? But
like I said, do it if you're in the area.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, if you're down at Ayr for the day or whatever, or you're going to Culzean Castle. Culzean Castle's only a mile or two down the road from there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting.
Yes. It's the Heads of Ayr Road.
Heads of Ayr. Yes, I knew it had a name.
Yeah.
I knew it had I've only been to it once.
Yes.
So there we go.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. I don't know how it would work in an electric car. So, we still have, because electric cars, of course, I don't know if... I can't remember if you can neutral or freewheel an electric car.
I don't think you can. Is that not why you need special recovery when you break down?
Well, this is just it. You've probably got an electric brake. This is quite ironic, called electric brake. You probably find the battery regen would kick in as you're going down the hill.
Yeah, that's the point. Is it not the case with electric cars? If they break down, they have to be physically lifted from the road because you can't roll
Some of them do. We had an incident like that where we actually had to get Hiab to take it off the road because it couldn't be towed. So,
and it raises big questions for recovery of such vehicles when we have many.
I can only speak about that as a particular model of car.
Right.
I don't know if that has been rectified. Maybe with these cars, you can put them into a recovery mode or something, and then they can be wheeled along.
Possibly.
I don't
Somebody
know.
will get in touch and let us know, no doubt.
Either that, or you have to put what we call slippy gyms underneath the wheels. Those are little casters. And you can just move the car around. So that's it. Do you have any myths or strange things, oddities or clarifications you'd like to make while we're on this subject?
Not
you got it all out your system?
Yep, I've got it all in my system. They do annoy me. I'm sure you've picked up on that.
Not the haunted ones. I mean, that's just
good for a laugh, except for the crackling microphone. If you've unleashed some demon on Scottish Roads Archive headquarters, you will be responsible for that.
That was actually quite scary.
We'll be getting an exorcism done, and some.
There was no reason for that to happen. But yes,
so if I'm sitting here typing stuff up later and I'm getting crackling going on and there's something hanging over my shoulder, I'll be coming for you. But nothing to add. We might revisit this in future because there's probably others from across Scotland.
I was going to say, so if you've been listening to this and you disagree, or you have maybe some evidence about things, maybe for all you're ranting about runways and motorways being used as runways, somebody comes and goes, actually, this was considered in some... Then we can relook at that and go, well, actually, there was some evidence that
elsewhere in the world and in Europe, I think there is examples of that, just none in the UK.
And not specifically to that bit of the M90.
Well, John, it's been very interesting.
It
it's been a good one, and I'm sure people will have enjoyed listening to it.
Sure
and again, no offence meant to any of our listeners in Dumfries and Galloway. We are just pulling your legs.
No, absolutely.
We do love you.
They say the same thing about us.
Of course they do. And as we always say, all our episodes can be found online on Spotify, Podbean, Apple Podcasts, YouTube as well, of course. Leave us a review. We've not said that for a while. Go on, give us a 5-star review because we deserve nothing less. For keeping you entertained every month.
Be honest in your reviews.
Indeed.
And we've of course got the social media, so don't forget to check us out on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram to get your daily fix of all Scottish Road Archive media related goodness. Lots of things to share lately, and it's really heating up actually on the social media front. So hello to all our new followers.
Yes, definitely. Hello to everyone, especially if you're new to the podcast, because there have been some people only recently found us.
Yeah.
Hello. Usual thanks to our sponsors, Eastford Excavations and HBS Scotland. Thank you. Without you, we would not be here.
No, we wouldn't. So thank you.
And we've got lots of more interesting episodes coming up this year.
Absolutely. We've got a full plan for this year, but no spoilers. You will hear them when you hear them. Indeed. And don't forget our website is very much there and available to you. If you want more detail on the history of Scotland's roads, bridges, motorways, you'll get it on there. But in the meantime,
Thank you, and bye for now.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.